Okay, welcome everybody to our first Vienna Biocenter Climate Lecture. I'm Jeroen Dobelaar from postdoc here at the Max Perutz. We as a climate group decided last October to do more on campus and to organize ourselves and to help to raise awareness that we as scientists can also change and make a contribution to reducing our footprint. And we also wanted to engage with all the stakeholders, including students, employees, and also management, to make our institute a sustainable institute in the future. And one of the things we decided to do was to spread what's possible and to share a positive message that actually we can change, and I guess COVID has shown that change is possible. So before introducing our speaker from today, I will quickly show what we've done already. And one of the parts we've done already was to take a survey. So here, of course, I'm representing the team at the Institute. And below, you can more or less see the roadmap of actions we've already did, from starting work groups, analyzing our CO2 footprint, and also doing a survey to see if people would like to help us on this endeavor. And one of the things shown here is more or less, we asked people generally, what do they think is the most worrying thing at the world before, and you can see climate change makes up quite a big portion of that. But I have to say, of course, this was before, and we closed the survey just when COVID happened. So at the moment, we're thinking about it that way, that COVID is the two little scientists looking at the peaks to flatten the curve. And now we're facing a bigger challenge, and we want to do the same thing with climate change. Interestingly, lots of people were interested, as you can see from these two graphs. So many people participated, and the numbers are not on there, but on the pie chart, you can see that more than 80% are willing to change their daily behavior and become more sustainable. But there's lots of work to do, as you can see from the two bar graphs at the bottom. So for example, people indicated that many of the equipment we use is not switched off on evenings or weekends. So this is consuming lots of energy, which is not efficiently used. And one thing we're also looking into is how people go to work. And we realized that even if you look at the distances people have to travel to get to work, cycling is done quite often, but people don't cycle every day to work. So we want to make our the way to work and also the infrastructure at our institute better, that it's easier for people to take a transport that is not producing any CO2. And finally, we also focused a little bit on what can we do in the lab. And one of the things we asked people was, are they willing to change their -80 freezers to -70, and more than 70% agree with that statement. And this is now also already happening on several floors in the Institute. So this is actually also raising the awareness. On the other hand, other problems we were not able to solve yet, like recycling. As you can see here, many people try to recycle, but as you can see, it's very fragmented because the infrastructure is not very optimal to do this, and people don't know if contaminated plastic should go in what bin. And we're trying to solve this in the future. So we did much more, as you could see from our timeline. So if you have questions, please contact somebody from our team, or you can also contact us at the email address you can see at the bottom of the screen. And I think this was also in the email. And then I would like to introduce our speaker from today, which is Kathryn Ramirez. She's actually a chemist or an analytical chemist and works also in the lab for more than 15 years. So she comes from the same background as us, more or less, and realized that labs can change and should change to become more sustainable. And she's been working on this for the last 10 years at Boulder University. And she is also engaged, or something we also observed is you cannot tackle this alone. And she also engaged with the International Institute of Sustainable Laboratories and many other groups to really tackle this and come up with great solutions for the lab. And won also some prizes like the Go Beyond Award, I think was a nice one to show that this is actually being recognized by universities and so on. So I hand over to Kathryn, who will tell us more of what we can do, or her experience, what she has done at Boulder and in the organizations she worked at, and what things maybe we can think of in our universities to change. Kathryn, can you? I'll stop sharing and then it's...
Great, yes. Great, can you see my screen then? I'm sorry, can you see my screen now?
Yeah, you're fine, Kathryn.
Okay, great, okay, great. Well, I just want to thank you all for this opportunity to share with you the work that I've been doing to build and create the Green Labs program for more than 10 years now. I mean, really, this has been a team effort in partnership with a lot of people. You know, part of the inspiration to create this program came from a time when I was working as a postdoc at the University of Colorado Boulder in a biochemistry lab. And, you know, surrounded by equipment, we were leaving it on all the time. And the most that there was to encourage us to be reducing our consumption was stickers on the light switch that said, turn off the juice. And I was just in the lab and thinking, gosh, there must be more that we could do to reduce our footprint. And so that's really how the program began. And, you know, my vision at first thought, oops, this is not, my slides are not shifting. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to try to stop sharing for a second and try to get this to work. Sorry, the slides won't go between each other. So let me exit the full view. Let me try again here. There we go. I think I've got it. Hold on one second. Okay, let's see if we can get, oh, good. Okay, so sorry about that technical difficulty, but we've got it now. So, you know, when I was starting this program, I was thinking, okay, this is going to be a program about engaging scientists and working together with scientists and seeing what we can do to reduce our consumption. And certainly that has been a strong focus of the program. It's about listening to scientists' ideas that they have, but also suggesting ideas to scientists, engaging them. We have set up what's called Laboratory-Aguilars, which are volunteers interested in encouraging the efficient use of resources in their lab departments. We've had many eco-leaders over the years. We have about 150 eco-leaders on campus right now. And the idea is to have an eco-leader per lab to be this point of contact and for that person to be the eyes, ears, and voice of conservation in their lab. And so this is how, you know, I first envisioned it starting off with. But of course, you know, there are a lot of people on a university campus that touch research. It's not just the scientists, it's the buildings, it's environmental health and safety, it's research administration, it's the recycling crews, the waste management crews on campus that all touch the laboratory environment in some way. So there's a lot of partnership to be had. So really, you know, over the years, yes, we've been doing a lot directly with scientists, engaging scientists, but then we've also been in a team approach with many other entities on campus. And that's constantly growing as well. Every year, I swear, or every couple of years, we find another partner to be working with on the impact of research. So, for example, like here's our facilities management team. You know, how they're also, our facilities management team is really great about trying to create energy efficient buildings across campus, but including laboratory buildings. So there's a lot of benefits that could be had by sharing and partnering with facilities management on conservation efforts. So just as one example, another one's our environmental health and safety team. There's a lot of great efforts that can be done by partnering with them. Of course, you know, we want to work with them. In fact, they've been incredibly helpful with creating our signage for recycling of laboratory materials and so forth, having safety incorporated into thinking about the messaging that's going to be on that signage and how we can do it. And just so many others. I'm not going to show pictures of all these groups, but there's just so much collaboration across campus. Yes, it's about engaging scientists, working with scientists, hearing scientists' ideas, trying to find the resources to implement those ideas, but it's also so much about a team approach. And so, you know, our program was created in 2009. It's actually equally funded by facility or jointly funded by facilities management and the environmental center. You know, we have a budget of $195,000 per year to cover our employees and also some operating expenses. But really, you know, when we first started, it was like 6-month pilot with $5,000 and that was it. So we started off very small and it's just been building over the years. So the focus areas of the Green Labs program that I manage at the University of Colorado Boulder has definitely been about scientist engagement, campus partnerships. I've already talked about that. Also sharing this across, you know, with other institutions and hearing what they're doing as well. So the International Institute for Sustainable Labs, the Green Labs Planning Group is a Google group. If you're interested in this topic, that's a great group to get on. You know, also there's other partnership with other nonprofits as well happening, such as My Green Labs, and we also partnered with like Department of Energy over the years. But the focus has been really on energy efficiency, water efficiency, solid waste reduction, hazardous waste reduction. And one area in recent years that I've really latched onto and really have paid a lot of attention to is sharing of equipment and space utilization. But certainly there's other efforts as well. I've become, through my association with ABRF, which is the Association of Biomolecular Research Facilities, have become very aware of rigor and reproducibility and you know, when we don't have reproducibility in our research, all the inefficient use of materials that can happen because we're basing research off of irreproducible research. So many other things as well. You know, on campus, we're also working on monitoring of ultra-low temperature freezers so that we don't lose research and so forth. So we collaborate with many different efforts on campus, but these are the main areas. And why laboratories? Well, they have a large footprint. And you know, in terms of energy, this is something that our facilities management engineering department put together. They just looked it's very simple. They just looked at our major research buildings on campus and how much energy those buildings utilize. So you know, they found that the space, you know, those major research buildings on campus utilize about 1/5 of the campus square footage, but they are responsible for about 43% of the energy. Now, this doesn't parse out that those laboratory buildings also have other spaces like some classrooms and other facilities in there, but it just gives a sense of the scale of the consumption of laboratory buildings. And when others have done this at other institutions across the nations, we found that our numbers do come in similar to what they have seen as well. You know, of course, there's also other ways that laboratories have large footprints. Lab plastics have gotten a lot of attention lately, the solid waste stream leaving the lab. So, you know, you may be aware of this 2015 study by the University of Exeter, where these researchers estimated that labs were responsible for about 5 million tons of plastic in 2014, plastic waste in 2014, which was about 1.8% of the total plastic use of the world at the time as an estimate. And then I thought this was really interesting about this, you know, basically Lab Waste Day Twitter effort that was started, I believe, by a scientist who was getting everyone to look at how much waste they generate in one day, and then that was extrapolated to look at the waste per year. And so Chemistry World actually did a summary of that Twitter event, looking at, and on average, it was scientists produced about 300 to 400 grams of plastic waste per day, or equivalent to 70 to 100 kilograms a year. So I thought that was really interesting to see that come out, and many scientists participating, looking at the waste stream. ultimately, our vision is to have a program for the Green Labs program that's all about inclusive sustainability, all the pieces of sustainability, in other words, what I'm trying to say, like, the environment piece, the economic piece, but also the people piece as well. And really, we've emphasized, the environment piece more than the other pieces to this point, but we have been working on the economic piece and the people piece as well, and we're working to improve that. But we really do want to be this about complete sustainability, not just about the environment, but also about the other pieces as well. And so we're working on that. So, I know there's a lot of interest around laboratory waste. So these are the different recycling programs that we've been able to get into place, from solvent drums to brown glass, brown chemical glass, foam recycling, pipette tip box recycling, plastic film, which is, all the bags that the single-use plastics come in, composting of non-hazardous paper towels from the lab. We've also done a pilot with ice pack reuse, and so there's some other materials we've tried to address as well, but this picture represents the ones that we have ongoing stable recycling going on. And of course, the best approach is to not generate the waste in the first place, but that obviously is not always possible. But I love learning, for example, about the fact that you have some glass pipette reuse going on in your facility. That is something that I wanted to work on my campus. There was previously a video by a lab at University of Pennsylvania that's out there. I think it's great. It's about reusing, instead of using plastic Petri dishes, she shows you how you can use glass Petri dishes. And so we plan to pursue that as an example, but it'd be great, I think, to get a video like that one by Alicia Preston from the University of Pennsylvania. If your campus is willing to do that, to show about reuse of glass pipettes and how does that go and so forth. Because when I did cell culture, and most of my colleagues did cell culture, we used single-use plastics all the time. So we never got to learn the process of using the glass pipettes. And the fact that you all are doing it now, I just think it'd be wonderful to learn from you how you're doing that, how's it going, how do you avoid contamination. And if you're willing to make a video like that one from the University of Pennsylvania on how to do this properly, I think that would be extremely useful. I tried to find a video out there that showed how that was done, but I wasn't having much luck finding an example video. So I think this is something where you could contribute and help the rest of us that are working on our waste streams as well, to have an example from your university of the great effort that you have going on there. So, so these are just, like I said, these are our stable recycling materials, but we're always trying to add on more. This is definitely one of the things that the scientists ask the most for on our campus is could we address this waste stream? Because they don't see of course, they don't see the energy pile up in their lab. They don't see the water pile up in their lab, the consumption of those items, but they do see the waste streams pile up. So this is one of the most frequent items that we get requests for, and it's also some of the most engaging items to get into place, because it engages the scientists on these other efforts. It's like a door opener. Being able to recycle these materials that they so much want to recycle, opens the door for us to also then talk about other efforts around energy and water. So it's a great door opener. And so here's some numbers on our waste diversion. We've done about 64,000 kilograms since 2009. And I will say these programs have slowly been added on over the years. So, we started first with foam, and we are adding each program slowly over the years. And it takes a lot of effort to make sure that we have a good recycling program that has likely success to continue for the long term. So these are programs that take a while to get in place, but eventually we've been successful in getting recycling programs in place for these materials. So it's been really wonderful to work on this. Composting, one of our newest ones is that we're going to be composting our animal bedding from our vivaria. And so we have been composting paper towels, but now we have a very stable program also that's just launched for our animal bedding. And so that's expected to really increase the composting from the laboratory type environment. We also have a solvent reuse program. I haven't talked about this, but our most successful solvents are acetone and ethanol. There's a lot of distillation of acetone going on and reusing of that acetone. We also have had some success with ethanol, cold traps from some laboratories that that were ethanol cold trapped. The ethanol is still clean and then is being used, transferred by our EH&S team, but then is being used by cell culture facilities, for example, to spray down their biosafety cabinets, because it is a clean source of ethanol. Other places, ethanol has also been distilled because it's being used to biopreserve, and so they've been able to take old ethanol, distill it, and then reuse it for more biopreservation. One thing I wanted to say is, you know, that I mentioned that we've been doing, for example, some ice pack recycling, and it's amazing to me that the companies in Boulder, Colorado, that will take our ice packs. It's a challenge, but we have found some small companies that really do want that waste stream. But it's amazing to me that they'll take it, and what they do is they put it in a clean sheath, to clean plastic bag to make sure it's clean for reuse. But that we can't get the companies to that ships the material to our facility in the first place to take that material. And so this is what I'm getting to is that we really need extended producer responsibility. And I think as scientists that are purchasing things in labs, that we can come together and request extended producer responsibility, and that as a collective group asking for this, that will have impact to move the market. And one example of that that's going on is My Green Lab is a nonprofit that has been spreading Green Lab efforts across the US, but also the world. And one of the things that they created, because there's a real need for something to rate products that are being purchased by labs on what their impact is, what their footprint is. And so that's what this ACT label does. It's the score for particular products, and it can be for consumables, chemicals and reagents, equipment. And so this is a rating of that. And this is something where if you're buying something, you could ask, do you have an ACT label for that product? And most likely they're going to say no, because it's a fairly new effort. There's not necessarily a lot of products on, but just by the fact that you're asking, you can help to move things. So this is something that you can do. You know, it's also nice, like compared to like Energy Star that just looks at the energy consumption of a particular piece of equipment. The ACT label is looking up, you know, the whole life cycle. So it's looking from the manufacturing to the end of life. You know, what is the environmental impact of that product from start to finish? So that's what's nice about the ACT label. Future versions of this also will include social responsibility. A number of us that are engaged with My Green Lab have brought this up as something that we'd like to include within the ACT label. So that's going to come up in future versions. You know, we're doing lots of energy conservation efforts. You know, it was mentioned in the beginning slides about -70, and certainly that is something that we've been working on for quite a while. Actually, the idea was not my idea. It came to me from a scientist working on my campus who had a freezer that was struggling. It was struggling to keep -80 and really just needed a whole compressor failure. But the technician said, listen, if you just raise the temperature of that freezer by 10 degrees, you'll be able to get more life out of that freezer. And sure enough, they did by years, not just like a couple months, but by years, they got more life out of that freezer. And they reached out to me because the lab member reached out to their PI and said, you know, are you okay with this idea of going to -70? And he's like, you know what? I don't know why we ever went to -80 in the first place. When I'm not sure if he was a postdoc or graduate student in this, when he was talking to his lab member, but he said, we used to always have our items at -70. I'm not sure why everything switched. Yes, I'm fine with -70. And so this lab member told me about this story and said, I have a great idea for you to encourage at the Boulder. And it turns out that University of California, Davis was already investigating. They had already metered some freezers at -70, -80, and they were working with the start of a Green Labs program at Harvard that was also engaged with them on this effort. So we just joined together, the three of us, and one of the things that I created to help the effort was this database where people could log the different sample types that scientists are choosing to store at -70 and how long they're storing them there and how long they've had that behavior of storing it at -70. And so that's a database that's available to you in case that helps with your -70 effort. I think it's amazing that the survey that you did gave results of 72% willing to switch their freezers. I think that's incredible. That it's usually a longer time to have a cultural shift like that. I think it's just wonderful. Certainly we're turning off equipment. We have so many efforts around energy, but I'm just putting a few up here. We've also started this program where we have ultra temperature freezers where scientists can rent space in our freezers, because we don't have a freezer farm that's managed and people can rent in. So I'm trying to build towards that, hopefully getting to that point where we can have that type of setup on our campus. So CU Green Labs manages 5 freezers right now that scientists can rent space in, and so that's already having impact. We have about 100 users from 25 different groups using those freezers. One great thing that we have been able to get in place to really encourage the selection of energy efficient equipment is financial incentives from that are funded by facilities management, by energy management within our facilities management group. And so here's just a couple of examples, but we can do this for, these are energy efficient examples, but we can also do this for water efficiency. And it doesn't have to be, it can be for any type of equipment where we can show that there's going to be energy savings based upon the selection of a particular piece of equipment compared to what's typically on the market. So this has been very popular among our scientists, and basically it's up to 5 years of electricity typically, or water savings. So, and one of the ways that we're able to justify some of those incentives is the fact that we've done a lot of metering of equipment. And I just wanted to let you know that we do have this database of metered data that's available that you can look at. We've been metering equipment for many years. We're lucky that we have scientists that really want to have their equipment metered and that trust us to meter their equipment. And so this has been great. We have this database, and I know that there are other universities in the United States that are using this database to justify some of the projects that they're trying to do. And so certainly that is available for you as well. So this graphic here, if you could think of these houses as a neighborhood, and each of them using 25 kilowatt hours per day in electricity, I wanted to show you the impact that ideas from scientists especially can have when the scientists are engaged to be thinking about ways that they can reduce consumption. So just for example, we had this one lab that had these diffusion pumps that were on 24/7 in their lab. And oftentimes laboratories that are working with diffusion pumps will need to leave those on all the time. They need to have that vacuum condition in their chamber. But this particular lab, so this kind of shows how research is so specialized, and what happens in one lab might not be happening in another lab. But this particular lab actually closed off their chambers from their pumps every single night and on the weekend. And so it came to light of, well, why can't we then just turn off those pumps at night? Because they are very energy intense. And so that's what the lab started doing. They started turning off their pumps at night and also over the weekend. And that is like removing 6 houses from the grid. That consumption was like removing 6 houses from the grid. And also saving tons of water, because those diffusion pumps were cooled by single-use tap water, and so that saved also tons of water. Here's another item that got brought to our attention by scientists in our ecology and evolutionary biology department. They had one scanning electron microscope in this department, and one of the lab members came to me and said, Kathy, that sound of the water going down the drain 24/7 is driving me crazy. Do you think there's something we can do? And a lot of times electron microscopes can't be turned off. But when contacting the manufacturer of this particular model, they said, yeah, we can turn that off when not in use, as long as it's turned back on every 2 weeks to make sure to maintain the vacuum in the chamber. Because this electron microscope was only being used infrequently, so there was opportunity around this. And so the microscope got turned off except when it was needed, or turned on at least every 2 weeks. That was like removing 3 houses from the grid. And also it stopped that constant stream of water going down the drain, which we never had a chance to measure to see what the impact was on that. But certainly it's like leaving a faucet on full all the time is what was going on. We had another lab say, listen, Kathy, we've got these externally vented biosafety cabinets. They were put in when the building was built, but we really don't need them. We really just need those, filter units that just that don't exhaust the air out of the building, but actually just filter the air back into the lab space. But those would be much more practical for us. And so we replaced their 6 biosafety cabinets with more energy efficient biosafety cabinets, which was like removing 2 houses from the grid. But what's not captured in here is it also saved on ventilation, which I believe was around $10,000 worth of ventilation savings per year as well. So that fed into that project. And, you know, every time our incentive program is really helping us move towards more and more energy efficient ultra temperature freezers on campus. So these 6 little squares is just showing that every time we do that, every time we replace one of our inefficient ultra lows with an energy efficient ultra low, it's like removing half of a house from the grid. And then I had mentioned earlier our shared ultra temperature freezers. At the time that I made this slide a while back, you know, we had 17 labs sharing those freezers. Now we have 25 labs sharing them. And so that, because those labs are not buying their own freezers to serve those purposes, it's like removing a bunch of these houses from the grid. And I just wanted to mention, you know, we're known a lot for freezer efforts on our campus. We even have mobile freezers that scientists can borrow when they're trying to defrost the freezer. We have that just for -20, but they're very popular. And so we recently did with My Green Lab, in partnership with My Green Lab, I gave a presentation on efficient cold storage just in April, and it's on LabRoots. So if anyone's interested in watching that to get more ideas around freezers, that's an hour-long webinar just on cold storage, cold sample storage. Certainly, there's a lot of water efforts that we're doing as well. Waterless condensers for high or medium boiling solvents has been a great effort at our campus. You know, the savings in water can justify us just buying those condensers for those labs that are really going to use them. So we've been providing some free condensers to those labs that will have committed to using them. Also recirculators, for especially the one on the left is showing it's being used for a rotovap, but also for the condenser on the left, there's a recirculator there that's just a bucket of ice water with an aquarium pump in it. So incredibly inexpensive. I just love the lab that was doing this. They had a low boiling solvent, so the waterless condenser was not going to work for them, but they wanted to, you know, of course, reduce their impact as well. So they came up with this idea, and I think others have done this as well. Maybe they read about it somewhere, but this whole idea of just using an aquarium pump and a bucket of ice water is just a great example of what can be done for inexpensive. Certainly we've done everything that we can to remove aspirator use on campus and replace it with vacuum pumps. If you have aspirators that are going all the time, this is a great way to save water. Low flow aerators is a standard on our faucets in our labs. If the labs absolutely need the increased flow, they can remove the aerator, and that does happen in places where there is a need. But in general, across the labs, we have low flow aerators on them. Process chilled water instead of one-pass cooling. Again, the labs are so specialized that knowing where these needs are, where all this water is happening, it really relies on the lab members stepping forward oftentimes and identifying, listen, I'm using a lot of water here. Is there something that we can do? And one of the things that we have been able to do in a couple of cases is to get the equipment on process chilled water to have then a building recirculating loop, have them part of the building recirculating loop of water, which is great. Like one example of something that was done was that our physics department had put in a helium liquefier, which is just great and amazing because, of course, helium is becoming this endangered element. And so this way they're able to recapture their helium and reuse it over and over again. But one of the unintended consequences of them doing that was that the water consumption in that building, because the device needed water cooling, was that in a 1 year period, the water consumption in that building went up by 160%. And so this is one of the projects that I was able to help with, to identify why there was a sudden surge in water consumption in that building, and it was because of the helium liquefier. So this great effort, but then there was all this different additional water consumption. So the facilities management was able to get that device. Luckily, there was process chilled water in the building, and was able to get that helium liquefier on the process chilled water, and so forth. I mean, other efforts that scientists have brought forward is like there was a facility that had a number of electron microscopes, and all the chillers for the electron microscopes were on single-use tap water. So we got those on processed chilled water as well. But these are things that scientists are stepping up and saying, listen, here's an area where we can conserve. So much can be, we can win so much by scientists stepping up and saying, here's something that we could address in our lab, and so that really relying on the scientists, but having that partnership with everyone else on campus is crucial to be able to bring these projects to realization. So this is just trying to show, you know, our estimates. Definitely this is estimates, but we do the best we can of our ongoing 10 years of cumulative savings from 2009 to 2019 on electricity, water, and then heating and cooling. I really don't have the exact numbers, but there's an estimate that I think is extremely conservative down there on our impact. But and in terms of electricity, you know, the number on the right, the 990 kilowatt hours per year, I mean, that's really our ongoing annual impact. We have accumulated it to be over the years of 990,000 kilowatt hours per year. And so then if you were to take the savings every year and add them up, then you get the number to the left, the 5.71 gigawatt hours total over the 10-year period. The same thing for the water there. You know, our ongoing annual impact has accumulated to 6.4 million gallons of water per year, or 44.8 million gallons in total over those 10 years if you were to add up the impact of each year. So one thing that I've been lucky is I have great people to work with, been able to hire student employees, graduate students that are working in laboratories or working in a research building to be leads in their building. These are the people to the left that you see here. Just wonderful people that want to lead on sustainability in their building, more than just their lab, but beyond and in their building, and coordinate things within their building. So those have been amazing people. I also have a wonderful staff of undergraduate students. This is a picture down at the bottom here, to help run like contests and other engaging activities around sustainability in the labs. So we also have lots of posters that we are known for posters. My undergraduate students make these posters, so it's a great contribution of the undergrads, a great skill that they're learning for the world, for the future, I mean, and at the same time, we have tons of different posters that it's available for everyone to use if they want, for those that you find applicable to your campus. So these are just some of the posters that we've created. You can see on the ultra temperature freezers, we highlighted all the names of the labs that were taking action. So this is using community-based social marketing to encourage action. And you know, just other messages that we want to get out to the labs. You know, our messages tend to be very positive and recognizing great action by lab members, which just only builds the momentum on our campus, in my opinion. So, and like I said, these are available on our website. You know, there's actually a file you can download for each one. And if you're having trouble with that, we're happy to give you a file in a different format to try to help you to reuse this. You can take off the bottom, you know, the CU Green Labs materials and put your own if you have, or just use the poster material above our contact information if that fits for your institution. So I know I'm running a little short. Maybe I can just say a few minutes on equipment sharing and why it's so important, and then stop there and maybe skip some of my slides. But you know, in my opinion, after walking labs, I've really done at CU Boulder since 1994 because I got my PhD there in chemistry, then worked as a postdoc in biochemistry, and then I've been doing the Green Labs program for the more than maybe 11, 12 years on my campus. And so really, one of the things I've observed is the impact that equipment sharing can have, that can lead to big positive impact. And the reason is because you know, research in individual labs can change directions over time. I mean, the research that you're doing right now, that an individual lab is doing right now, might not be what they're doing in a few years from now or 5 years from now. And if a department or a lab has an individualized mentality to research, the equipment that lab is using at this time, they may not need later. And so what can happen is that our spaces can become partially storage spaces, our laboratory spaces can become partially storage spaces of equipment waiting to be used again, or that's underutilized. It really could be benefiting many labs. And understandably, a lab might not want to let the equipment go because they might need it in the future and they don't want to have to repurchase it. So my point is that I've seen this for each of these pieces of equipment where actually in the lab that I was working in, biochemistry, we had a floor centrifuge that we were holding on to, I guess, in case we ever needed it. But we basically used it as a countertop, or we'd store boxes on top of it. I've seen biosafety cabinets actually one used just for lining up the different sizes of gloves because they didn't really need it at that time. And other equipment as well that is just being used as a surface, or it's just being underutilized at this time. And laboratory space is incredibly expensive. So to have our space go to being more of a storage space, that's a very inefficient use of that expensive and energy intense space. And so, and not to mention, what else I want to say about that? Oh, it'll come to me. But anyway, so one of the ideas that we had on our campus was lucky that our CFO was offered an internal grant for efficiency, and I gathered together some scientists from multiple biological departments, and we pitched this idea. So sustainability in collaboration with researchers pitched this idea of creating this this shared equipment program within these 3 bio departments for small and medium equipment. And I say small and medium equipment because really the very large, super expensive equipment was naturally being shared because it's too cost prohibitive not to. But the untapped potential across the departments for small and medium equipment that also could be shared, that was sitting in the labs, being underutilized, there was just such opportunity there. And so we did. We actually won this grant opportunity. We pitched the idea. We won the funding. We were the one winner. And that particular year, and already this project, so it gave funding for a manager to be there for the first year, and then that funding we found other sources of that funding for the second year. But the impact in such a short period of time has been incredible. I mean, I think the $850,000 in avoided equipment purchases. So scientists not having to purchase equipment because they have access to the equipment through this sharing program, which a lot of the equipment, like 85 instruments, have established ongoing sharing, but also this manager of this facility that was hired to implement this project and to continue running this project, he inventoried the equipment resources available in the 3 departments, whether or not people were willing to share them. But what he's found is that if there is someone that needs that particular piece of equipment and he knows there's someone that has that equipment, he'll make the ask and see if that lab will allow this researcher to use that piece of equipment. And every time he's finding that the researcher says, yes, I can share that piece of equipment, even though it was not initially identified for sharing, ultimately through connections and through trust, this is leading to sharing and avoiding then the need to buy all this equipment. So again, the most untapped potential in my opinion is for this small and medium equipment that is more individualized, tends to be more individualized. And maybe this is not so much happening at your campus, but this is what I've observed on my campus, that luckily we have these amazing examples of sharing, which I've been able to write a case study, for example, on our biochemistry shared cell culture facility. There's a number of facilities I could write case studies on to make the point. So we have these amazing examples of sharing to learn from, but then we also have the other happening as well, where we have a very individualized mentality for equipment and space, and then that leads to inefficiency. And there's so much untapped potential to do more around that. So that slide that I showed you for the BioCore here, this last one, what I want to do is take this example and implement it elsewhere on campus, see if we can get the funding to do that, because there's so much untapped potential to use those equipment resources, not have to buy more, not have to have that space to house those additional pieces of equipment and so forth. There's so much opportunity to be more efficient. So, I've kind of touched on this, but one of the important things is that sharing research equipment just has has strong connections with space utilization. If we can be using our space better, that again is very energy intense space, but it's also very expensive to build. So if we can be using that space more efficiently, then that has great benefits, not only for reducing our energy impact on the environment, but also on saving our institutions money because we're using that space better. And I don't think I have time to go into it, but just so you know, we did do this case study of this shared cell culture facility at our campus, which is an amazing example of efficiency. And basically what we did was we compared, okay, we have 16 labs that are going in and using the space, using the biosafety cabinets, using the incubators to do their research, but it's all in a shared environment with a manager that's doing so much of the logistics for them, like getting the biosafety cabinets certified, autoclaving their waste, making sure they have the materials they need. So incredible efficiency just around the time saved for the researchers, but also in space and in equipment and so forth. So we took this shared facility that was serving 16 labs, and we said, okay, what if these labs had chosen not to do it this way? What if they each had their individual cell culture set up in their lab, which I know there's times where that actually is required, but there's many opportunities where a shared facility will work, and that has been shown by this biochemistry shared cell culture facility. So we just compared to what if each one of those labs had their individual facility, and we compared that in operations and space and the amount of equipment and people's time, because there's a manager running this facility. What was the difference? What was the comparison? And that's what this case study does. So if you have a chance to look at it, I encourage you to look at it. We saw 30%, and this is very conservative. To me, it's probably more than 30%, but 30% less use of space to serve the needs of 16 labs. Also, this lab, this facility moved from one building to another. The new building cost $800,000 less to build because they were using less space. You can just see from this graphic, the left is the shared facility, the right is the amount of equipment that would be needed for 16 individual facilities. You can just see the difference in the equipment just in this graphic. I'm not, like I said, I don't have time to go into all this, but one of the biggest benefits was the ongoing cost savings to the scientists, because they were saving so much time, and also things were being bought in bulk and therefore at reduced cost, and they were saving ongoing annual savings. So these are annual savings. This graphic is supposed to show ongoing annual savings in direct costs for the scientists, but also, of course, the university was winning in avoided costs for maintenance, operation, and utilities, because less space was needed to serve these needs. And then I have this page on my website that just gives 16 different reasons all around why shared equipment with a manager is beneficial to university environment, is beneficial for cost avoiding university mission, revenue, compliance, ethics, and so forth. So I will end there. And I'm sorry if I went a bit over here. Yeah, I did. I'm so sorry. But I hope that you'll reach out to me and reach out to our program if you have questions. And I encourage you to share also what you're doing, maybe through the Green Labs Planning Group, I2SL, which has a conference coming up in October, and likely it'll be online due to COVID-19. So that might be a great and easy way to participate in that conference. But yeah, I encourage you to reach out to me if you have questions or you want to know how we implemented an idea on our campus. And I'd love to hear more about what you're doing as well. Especially, I want to learn about your example of the glass pipette.
Thank you, Kathryn. Great talk and many inspiring points. So we have time for questions, and so we can do two ways. Either you can raise your hand and we will unmute you and you can ask directly Kathryn. Otherwise, you can write in the chat and we will read it. We read the questions for Kathryn. So please raise your hand if anyone wants to ask a question. No one? Ricardo, you may start. Yeah.
Hi, thanks very much for the talk. So I have a question related to the plastic waste reduction. You mentioned the use of glass pipettes, and I mean, we are successfully using them in our department, even for tissue culture. I have pretty delicate cell lines and I've never had any problem by switching.
Great.
I just have pretty provocative question, like, so the glass pipettes have to be washed and sterilized. Can it be used as an argument? Because some people might say maybe it's not the greenest or not the most sustainable option. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any study that's been done, and maybe it has been done, and I just haven't seen it, but that's comparing the impact of the single-use plastics versus all the water and sterilization that needs to happen for the glass pipettes. I mean, I think it'd be great if a side-by-side comparison could be written up. This is one thing I would say about the Green Labs community, and having you all be part of that community, is that we have created a culture that's very sharing. We don't hold anything back. We share everything that we're doing to try to help each other. So, if someone was to do a case study on that, I think it would help the community make, an educated decision on this about, well, what's the impact, the footprint of one versus the other. I have heard that argument. Well, the water consumption is so much for the glass pipettes, but to be honest, I haven't seen a side-by-side case study that's been done to justify one over the other. Yeah.
Thanks. We have a question from Marco.
Hi, Kathryn. Yeah, you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for the great talk. It was super, super interesting. Yeah, so I'm from the VBC, that's right next to MFPL, and we're also trying to set up with the direction and the technical services a bunch of ways to try to save in trash and everything. So it would be cool if, yeah, we could reach out to you. It's great that you're available. I took a few screenshots of your slides. Is it okay if I share them, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and if wanted, I could share a document. I could give it to this group, and it could be sent out if you'd like. All the
that
slides.
Would be great. I think.
Be happy to do that.
Thanks.
And maybe in that I could also have an email with some, because I mentioned a number of resources that are on our website, but to be honest, we've got a lot of pages on our website, and it sometimes can be hard to find exactly what you're looking for. We do want to do some major improvements to our website, but maybe I could provide, go through the presentation and provide direct links to a lot of the materials that I mentioned in the talk that could be, so it's easier to find these resources, like the -70 database, and just our -70 pages in general, but also like our posters page, so that you can look through all the different posters that we've created that other institutions are more than welcome to use. Like, our one requirement is that no one's going to sell them and make money off of them, but to be using them for free on your campus, absolutely, we want people to do that.
Okay, so, I have one more thing. I just wanted to know, I was pleasantly surprised the other day to receive a pack from New England Biolabs with a product at 4 degrees, and it was in a box, but it didn't have the usual polystyrene. It had hemp bags. I was just wondering, is that normal, or is that going to be the future? Because that's good. And how did they get to that decision? Did someone push for that?
Yes, I would say, I have been seeing this. New England Biolabs has been working on their cold shipment packaging. Also, Thermo Fisher has been. We actually had a scientist receive a cold shipment on a specialized cardboard box, basically, that was not the polystyrene waste. There has been a big push from groups, the Green Labs community, and also from scientists not wanting these polystyrene coolers, which just it's just a terrible waste stream. So there has been a real push, and one group, if people are really interested in laboratory waste, there is a laboratory waste focus group for part of I2SL. My full-time assistant, she's participating on that group, along with people from like Emory University, University of Georgia, and a whole bunch of other universities are there. And that would be a great place to contribute and try to have collective action to try to move the market.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see also from the chat, Amina says that it would be great to share some documents. And just for everyone, the talk is recorded and it will be available in the coming days. So there's another question. See a hand raised from Gregor. Please, Gregor, you should be able to ask your question.
Yes, thank you very much for this great talk. My question, I guess, was already partly answered now by your response to the previous one. It was basically about whether you have any specific tips maybe for how we as an institute can negotiate with suppliers to force them to decrease the packaging material and to ship their products more ecologically friendly. Because, I mean, often they're, standard products that you order from a catalog and there's not much power that we have in choosing what to get. And we also don't have too much negotiation power, perhaps. So perhaps you have some tips on how to deal with that.
You can.
Yes. So I think when you're purchasing, if you can ask for the ACT label, like I mentioned, also working with your procurement to see if that can get into your negotiated contract. If you're, I know like CU Boulder has a negotiated contract that we're supposed to purchase from Thermo Fisher whenever possible. So in the future, when that contract comes up to renewal, maybe there's negotiation that can be had with that contract. Also, I've learned that a lot of universities, at least in the US, use this group called E&I, and they have like pre-negotiated contracts. So one of the things that I was asking them is, are you including sustainability in every one of those contracts? And so that's something that maybe you could talk to your procurement professionals about. What contracts are you negotiating or what contracts are you using that are actually pre-negotiated with other companies? That can happen as well. And can we ask that as part of using those contracts that they incorporate sustainability into it? So I think there's a lot through this. There's also the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council, which has not done a lot with labs, but they're aware of this environment and the need for the science community to also be a part of their efforts around sustainable purchasing. And so, if there's a concerted interest of people being engaged with that group and moving things along through that collective effort, I think that's a great avenue as well. There's really a lot of different ways to try to have impact. But like as an individual scientist, right now, I think when you're trying to buy something, if you could just ask, do you have an ACT label? Have you considered sustainability with this? Because what we've been told by manufacturers and companies selling items is if the scientists are asking for it, they will shift. So
okay.
We have a question from the chat. So Philomena and Sabrina ask, what are the strategies to reinvest the money gained by, for instance, energy savings?
Yes. So, I do know that a number of campuses do have recirculating funds that, based upon the energy savings, then that money gets replenished into an account. We haven't been able to tap that so much with my program, so we have not done so much along these lines. But if this person wants to reach out to me in particular, I might be able to connect them with like my colleague at Harvard, who I believe has done a bunch of this work, and we'd be happy to share that with this individual. But we basically, a lot of our incentives and our, because I am able to tap other sources of funding when I can show that there will be energy savings on campus, but we've been able to do this just with one-off, showing that there will be savings by doing this, and then it gets funded by campus. But we haven't looked to like reinvest the money gained from the energy savings.
Hi, Kathryn, it's Jeroen again. I just had a question for the Green Office thing, because you started very small and then you build up your group more or less on the way. So what were the biggest hurdles in the beginning, or if you now look back 10 years, what would be the advice, how to start this, how to convince management, how to motivate people and so on? Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, well, I think in having an engaged community on campus, so engaging scientists and pulling them in into contributing and being a part of this program, having this positive public recognition, which is using community-based social marketing, has been incredibly beneficial for building up the community across campus. So there is Fostering Sustainable Behavior is a book that discusses this, and it's great to use this community-based social marketing to do that. We've had great success with that. One of the things in building up the program from the very beginning, starting with very little funding and moving towards more and more funding over the years, I got to say one thing in the way that my program is structured that's really helped with that is the fact that the funding is joint. It's joint between facilities management and student affairs, our Office of Sustainability, which is the environmental center. So we call it the environmental center. It's 50 years old, that environmental center this year, in fact. But having our funding come from two sources has been great for enabling the program to grow, because whenever we're asking for funding from one, we're only asking for half of the funding, and the other funding's coming from the other. And so that has enabled it to seem like less of an ask of each, and enabled the program to grow more rapidly with funding and resources to hire a full-time employee, and to have funding for student employees, and also have funding for operations expenses. To have that funding coming from two sources has been incredibly beneficial, so that we're not asking it all from one at any one time. But those are a couple of things. I also, I have other information that, like other slides that talk, or even a whole nother presentation that talks about starting a Green Labs program. Be happy to, it's full of tips, and would be happy to discuss that more with anyone that's interested.
Okay, and then I had one very practical question. Is you said some of the stuff you're able to compost, so the waste from animal cages and whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a biosafety argument always that you need to, so how does it work on a practical level, that you autoclave everything and then you compost, or do you have other, or?
No, there is separation of the items that really cannot be composted. Actually this is a wonderful project, because it really showed the necessity of a cross-campus collaboration to make that happen, because we had to have our campus vet involved. We had to have our Office of Animal Research involved. We had to have facilities management, waste management involved. We needed our environmental health and safety. We needed our local composter involved, and we needed sustainability involved. You can imagine the size of the table with all of those people around discussing, can we do this? And luckily for us, other institutions had already begun this, so we had those examples as well. But no, what was determined early on in that long collaborative process was that actually most of the waste would be fine to compost directly. It didn't have items in our waste, in that waste, that was going to be something that could not be directly composted. Yes, there are those cages that are flagged that really cannot go into the compost, and they're not, but the vast majority of the waste is able to be composted directly. And we had all those entities involved in making those decisions, and so it's just, I love that project, because it was such a great example of collaboration and coming together around a project that's going to have great positive impact.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's another question from Amina from the chat. Are you trying to recycle plastic, especially plastic from packaging, from the laboratories? And this is very difficult with us, as we have to autoclave the waste from the laboratory, but would it still be recyclable?
Yeah, we're able, a couple of plastic streams that we're able to directly recycle without autoclaving is our pipette tip boxes. This goes down to Denver. It was collected by our local facility and then goes down to Denver, and it's been directly pelleted into plastic that can go back onto the market. So this is one that we have not had to autoclave. Another one is the clean plastic bags that the single-use plastics come in. So we're able to recycle all that plastic film, it's called. Those plastic bags that all that single-use plastic is coming packaged in, we're also able to recycle that as well. There is a presentation from a while back, and as far as I know, CDC in Atlanta, Georgia is still doing this, where they're actually autoclaving waste and then recycling it that was biohazardous waste. So they were collecting their biohazardous waste in separate containers, that which could be recycled and that which couldn't. They were autoclaving the waste tagging showing that it was autoclaved and then it was being recycled. I'm not 100% sure if that is continuing to go on or whether that has stopped, but it's my hope that it's continuing. It seemed like an incredibly successful program that had been going on for a number of years. And if anyone would like that information on that presentation, I'd be happy to share. It was given at ITWSL a number of years ago, but it is just a wonderful effort. So yeah, I do believe there's some that can be done without autoclaving, but others, you know, there's other waste streams that we're going to have to work towards addressing, like this one that CDC was doing, where they were able to recycle it, but only after autoclaving.
There is a question from Veronica. Please, Veronica, go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the talk. I think it was really interesting. A lot of great examples that how much change this can make. And I especially like your visualization with terms of how it takes off a house off the grid. Like, that's a very striking way. I would like to ask a question a bit similar to the plastic glass question, but when we're talking replacing old equipment for more efficient equipment, especially if we're talking freezers or fridges, which need to be made with materials and with electricity and transported, and also have coolants which are hundreds of thousands times worse than CO2 in terms of their greenhouse gas effect. Do you know of any studies? Has this been studied? Is it better to use a freezer or use an old light until it breaks and then buy LED lights? Or is it better to use LED lights straight away? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do hear you. And, you know, I will say that our replacement of equipment with energy efficient equipment has been at end of life for that equipment. So, for example, our financial incentives have been very lucky that we've been able to apply those to equipment that has broken, that the scientist is on the edge. Should I repair? It's going to be really costly to repair, or is it better to go ahead and go with a new item? So, you know, a lot of the equipment that we're doing the replacement with is for equipment that really is at end of life or near end of life. And that's when we were able to give them the incentive, even though their equipment just recently broke. So we've been focusing more on that. I'm finding I can't even keep up with those purchasing streams on my campus, to be honest. It's like new purchases, like when a new PI comes in with a startup package and they're going to do a bunch of purchases, I do what I can to capture those scientists. We've been able to actually start through our dean's offices, start to be able to email those scientists before they even arrive on campus. After they've signed that they're going to join campus, we've been able to share with them our program and our efforts and encourage a selection of energy efficient equipment. So from the very beginning, or also for the existing scientists, if they have to add more equipment to their lab, being able to capture those purchases when they're happening, but also then replacement of equipment that you're speaking about. Usually it's been end of life equipment. They're going to have to replace it anyways. They need to continue the research with the equipment they're going to purchase anyways. Might as well purchase energy efficient at that moment and capture that. To answer your question, I have not done like, what about all the other equipment? Should we be looking at some equipment that is very energy intense? Maybe it's not at the end of its life. And should we be replacing some of that equipment? We have not actually touched on that area so much at this point. So I hope that answers your question sufficiently.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. And I got to say too, unfortunately, our incentive program, although I do believe, and there's commitment to bring it back, right now it is on hold because of the financial impact of COVID on the University of Colorado Boulder. So right now that's one of the programs among many that are being impacted by the financial situation as a result of COVID. But I have full belief that the program will come back. We've run it for more than 5 years. It has been incredibly beneficial to shift our campus towards more energy efficient equipment where that equipment exists. Again, we need to keep asking the companies, you know, please produce energy efficient equipment. You know, it's amazing. Once there was pressure on the ultra temperature freezer manufacturers to produce more energy efficient equipment, that equipment dropped in electrical consumption by half, easily by half, if not more than half. And so it, you know, that pressure of people buying and what they're choosing to buy, is you as scientists, you know, the push that and the encouragement that you can give these manufacturers to produce more energy efficient equipment. Once that hits the market, I mean, it can have impacts very quickly. It was only a couple of years that the freezers really went, or a few years that they went, dropped so fast in consumption, the ultra temperature freezers.
Thank you, Kathryn. I guess there is no more questions. I would like to wrap it up. So first of all, thank you for this great talk and plenty of points to discuss. I think there will be quite some discussion in the campus now, and hopefully we will push for some positive change. And as I also reminded before, the talk is recorded, and I guess people can also get in touch directly with you for more information. And also you can write us here at the climate group. Mail is climate.group@mfpl.ac.at. And yeah, I guess for today we are done. Thanks again, Kathryn. And I would like to remind everyone that this is just the first of a series of lectures. So for next one will be more about climate science. So please stay all tuned, and we will come later with more details. And again, thank you, Kathryn, for your fantastic talk.
Yeah, no, thanks for letting me share it today. I really enjoyed sharing this with you all today. And I'm inspired by your initiative to have action. I think it's wonderful.
Thanks again. Thank you so much.